I'm SaltWire weather specialist Alistair Alders, keeping track of a potent Texas low that's going to bring a mix of snow, rain, and strong winds to Atlantic Canada during the middle stages of this week. And as we take a look at the system on the radar imagery this afternoon, you can see just how large it is. The bands of rain extend from Florida back in towards the Great Lakes region. We have snow extending back into the Midwestern U.S. So this is a powerful low pressure system that will also be moving through New England, Ontario, Quebec, and of course into Atlantic Canada. And as we take a look at the satellite imagery, you can see that it's starting to get that classic storm shape, that comma, as it starts to track into the Great Lakes region. And there are a number of weather alerts in effect with this storm. You can see across much of eastern North America, really from the US right through Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. And here in Atlantic Canada, we have a variety of warnings that range from wind and rainfall to winter storm and snowfall. So there is a lot to talk about. Let's dive into it, and we'll start first with the futurecast just to time out how this is going to be moving through. And we'll start around 7:30 this evening. Conditions relatively calm, still a few onshore snow flurries in western Newfoundland and in Cape Breton. But as we move the picture forward through the evening and into the overnight hours, those first bands of snow will start to arrive in southwestern Nova Scotia and the western half of New Brunswick. This will be near and after midnight tonight. As we advance forward towards sunrise on Wednesday morning, the snow fairly widespread across New Brunswick. The snow also moving into central Nova Scotia and later in the morning, eastern Nova Scotia and PEI. But there's going to be warm air with this storm, so we will see the snow changing over to rain, and that will happen fairly quickly in southwestern Nova Scotia, but that will take place on Wednesday morning across the western half of Nova Scotia, and as well in southern New Brunswick. There will also be a transition over to rain there. You can see by the noon hour that snow pretty widespread across Prince Edward Island and filling in over the eastern half of Nova Scotia. Now, through the afternoon, the warm air continues to fill in so that snow changes over to rain in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and most of New Brunswick. I do think over the northern half of New Brunswick, there will be a transition, but likely more so a snow and ice event than one that is going to be rain. And that system will start to clear out as we go into and through Wednesday night. Just some scattered showers and flurries left over, but then it's also moving into Newfoundland and Labrador. And you can see we're around the mid-evening on Wednesday where snow starts to move into Newfoundland and Labrador, reaching the St. John's area likely near or after midnight. And then that snow will transition over to rain across at least the southern and eastern portions of Newfoundland on Thursday morning. There will likely be a period where there's some ice pellets or freezing rain, but certainly it looks like we will see a transition over to a few rain showers. That is also possible for the rest of Newfoundland, but in general, more so a snow event for central and western Newfoundland and into Labrador. So as we take a look at the snowfall outlook, first for the Maritimes, and what you're looking at here is darker colors are higher amounts and the lighter colors are lower amounts. And the lower amounts are likely right along the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia, where we could see trace to perhaps 5 centimeters of snow. But move further inland, and that's where we could be looking at 5 to possibly 10, maybe locally 15 centimeters of snow before changing over to rain. And that would be most likely for areas in the Annapolis Valley over higher terrain, along the North Shore on higher terrain, and as well in Cape Breton. Now, the Highlands could receive 15 to 30 centimeters of snow because it will be slower to transition there. So something to keep in mind. Prince Edward Island, generally looking at 2 to 10 centimeters. Some local pockets up to 15 can't be ruled out. And a general 10 to 20 centimeters for New Brunswick. But over northern New Brunswick and higher terrain, we could be looking at upwards of 20, maybe even 30 centimeters of snow. And for Newfoundland, with the snowfall that is expected, really not a significant event for eastern Newfoundland. We're looking at perhaps up to 5 centimeters of snow in the St. John's area. But as you move back in towards western and southwestern Newfoundland, certainly along the southwest coast over higher terrain, that is where we're looking at more significant accumulation. Amounts will come down at lower elevations, but certainly some shoveling to do as you make your way out on Thursday and later in the day on Thursday too. Now, winds are going to be quite powerful with this storm too. We will start during the overnight tonight, and you can see that winds will start to pick up generally first in the range of around 40 to 70 kilometers per hour as you're waking up on Wednesday morning. But as we go through the morning, you can see those winds will continue to increase and will likely peak over the western half of Nova Scotia later on Wednesday morning and into the afternoon. And we're looking at peak wind gusts likely in the range of 70 to 110 kilometers per hour for Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and southern New Brunswick. The central and northern half of New Brunswick will also see strong winds, but likely not as severe. But still, winds are going to be quite powerful as we go throughout the day on Wednesday, and those stronger winds arrive later in the afternoon through the evening over eastern Nova Scotia and Cape Breton. Will also peak in the evening for Prince Edward Island. And the areas most likely to see winds upwards or even exceeding 110 will be areas exposed to the southeast winds, so directly along parts of the coast, areas at higher elevations, and as well on the lee side of steep terrain. So lace wet winds are going to gust upwards of 130, possibly 150 kilometers per hour. And it's possible that very locally on the lee side of very steep terrain, you could see some gusts that will exceed 110 kilometers per hour. And I say that because we have experienced that with the last few windstorms that have moved through. This is looking very similar to those. The winds, though, will start to diminish as we go through Wednesday night and into Thursday. And as we take a look at the winds for Newfoundland, you can see that initially they're relatively light, a bit breezy, but as we go later in the day on Wednesday, here's around Wednesday mid-afternoon, you can see those strong winds start to build along the southwest coast of Newfoundland. But through Wednesday night is when we'll really start to see the winds picking up for most of the province, although likely for eastern Newfoundland, not until the overnight hours as you make your way into Thursday. And peak winds will generally be in the range of around 60 to 80 kilometers per hour with higher gusts along the coast. And as well, the wreck house winds are expected to gust between 130 and 150 kilometers per hour. So we certainly know that storms of this nature have led to power outages in the past, so we need to prepare for those. With the snow and the frozen ground and the warm up with the areas that receive more rain, we could see some localized flooding, certainly some pooling on the roads. So make sure your storm drains are cleared. And also because of the very strong winds, we could see elevated water levels along the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia. So there could be some localized coastal flooding near high tides on Wednesday and Thursday. So that is very important to keep in mind, especially if you live along the coast. And of course, we're keeping a very close eye on this storm. We will continue to have updates on our website, saltwire.com.